Today we're going to be talking about break, continue, and else in for loops. So break. Break is very similar to while loops. Whenever you hit this break, we would completely stop the looping process. We would skip everything in the for loop. We would do anything after it, but if there's nothing after, then we just stop the code. So here's an example. Sum equals 0 for I in range 6. Remember that 6 means 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We would never hit 6. We would do our if statement, which is I equals 5. We would break. And if this isn't true, if I does not equal 5, we would go to our else, which is just adding I to sum. So 0, 0 is not 5. So 0 plus 0 is 0. Now I is 1. 1 is not 5. 1 plus 0 is 1. 2 is not 5. 2 plus 1 is 3. 3 is not 5. 3 plus 3 is 6. 4 is not 5. 4 plus 6 is 10. 5 is 5. So we would break and print out sum, and sum should be 10. Continue is also very similar to while loops. Whenever we hit this continue, we would just restart the looping process. So if sum equals 0 for I in range 6, same thing as before, we would start at 0 and hit the number before 6, which is 5. We would then move on to our if statement, which does include an or. Our or means either I equals 3 or I equals 5. Only one of these have to be true for us to continue. And if neither of these are true, we would hit our else, which is just adding I to sum. So let's start. Sum is 0, 0, and I is 0, which means I is not 3 or 5. We would just add 0 plus 0. I is now 1. 1 is not 3 or 5. We would add 1 to 0, so 1. 2 is not 3 or 5. 2 plus 1 is 3. 3 is 3, so we would just continue. Now I is 4. 4 is not 3 or 5, so we would add 4 plus 3, which would equal 7. 5 does equal 5, which means we would continue, and at this point we stop, so we would just print out sum. So our answer should be 7. Else. Else is also very similar to while loops. Whenever we don't hit a break, we would always hit this else. It just happens after the while loops. So let's look at an example. Before we even start breaking this down, we can already notice that we don't have a break. If there is no break, that means that the else always happens. So x equals 0 for I in range 1, 5, which means we start at 1 and we hit the number before 5, which is 4. And then we would add I to x. And then in our else statement, we would do x minus equals 10, which is just subtracting 10 from our x. So let's start. We have 0, and then our I starts off at 1. 1 plus x is 1. Now I is 2. 2 plus 1 is 3. Now I is 3. 3 plus 3 is 6. I is 4. 4 plus 6 is 10. And then in our else, 10 minus 10 equals 0. So our x should equal 0. Okay, now practice. Feel free to pause the video whenever you see the code, and then you can skip to the answers. So this is our code. We have sum equals 0 for I in range 1, 10, 3. This just means we start off at 1, we end at 10, and we're going by intervals of 3. We have an if else statement in this code. Our if is if our number is even. Remember that mod 2 equals 0 just means is it even. We would continue. And then in our else, we have sum plus equals I. And then we have another else statement, which is saying sum full division equals 2. And so we can already tell that this else happens because there is no break. So to break it down even further, we just have an if-else block and an else block. Pause the video if you want to do this on your own. So the answer should be 4. Okay, next up, we have sum equals 0 for I in range 12, 0, negative 5. Negative 5, remember, that just means we're subtracting, so we would go from 12 to 7 to 2. Okay, so in our if-else statement, our if is saying if I ever equals 2, we would break. In our else, that just means I does not equal 2. We would just add I to sum. And then in our else statement, we would do sum full division equals 2. So now that we're looking at it, there is a break, which means there's a possibility that we will not do our else statement. And at the very end, we print out sum. So to break it down even further, we have our if else block and our else block. So pause the video if you want to do it on your own. So the answer should be 19. And that is it for break, continue, and else in for loops. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comments. And remember to like and subscribe. Thank you guys for watching.